Thank you, everybody. Welcome to our second educative seminar for the 2025 Australian Economics competition. My name is Justin Virly. I'm a high school economics teacher in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, of course. And I'm very excited today to invite this week's guest for our second seminar. His name is Samuel Brew. Sam is an undergraduate economics and math student at UNSW with a passion for coding, startups, and building a better world. Since making the national team in the 2022 Australian Economics Olympiad, he has broadened and applied his knowledge of economics to his own research interests, understanding startups and markets, and to the everyday world around me. So he can not just understand the policies governments enact, but to critique them and start to design better ones. Um, Thank you very much, Sam. And how lucky are we to have, I think for the first time, as long as we've been doing these educative seminars, someone who's actually participated in the seminar and has actually won the competition. So thanks very much, Sam.
No, thank you for having me, Justin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So we'll just kind of get right into it. Now, normally, you are the first sort of guest that we've had that is still at the very, I guess, initial stages of his economics career. Still being a university student over at UNSW, the University of New South Wales. So where we would normally have a lot of, tell us about your career path, your career journey, the most interesting policies you've cooked up, or whether you've worked in the public sector, private sector. Um, we're very excited today to be able to kind of pick your brain, given that you are in the unique position of having your foot in the professional and academic world, but then also, I, I, I hope to make a safe assumption, can still relate to what the high school students may be feeling and may be thinking and may be worried about as you were in their shoes just a few years ago. So I
I hope
suppose
I'm
my
not that out of touch yet.
So I suppose my first question for you, Sam, is actually we'll go into your personal and your academic sort of context right now. Just to start off, can you expand a little bit on yourself? Speak a little bit about yourself and a bit on the combination of economics with coding and startups. Are they mostly separate fields, or is there much overlap in the skill set you are learning or the work you are hoping to pursue?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I got into coding when I was about 7, and I played with that outside of high school for pretty much my whole life at this point. I fell in love with economics in high school. I got to study it in year 11. I had an absolutely brilliant teacher, and that then turned into my wanting to study economics at university. For me, startups, which is one of my biggest passions, and economics are separate in ways, but also very connected in other ways. They're connected in that much of what I want to do in the startup world involves selling to governments, it involves working with public policy economics, and I'm happy to go into that a bit later. There are also plenty of connections more on the investment side of startups. I've been very lucky over the last 6 months to be able to participate in a student program run by a large venture capitalist in the US, which was one of the first to invest in both Google and Logitech. So very exciting to be a part of that program.
Mm.
And as part of that, I've been able to understand more the investment side of startups, what goes into understanding what makes a good startup from an investment perspective, and being able to bring an economics background to that is absolutely invaluable, to be honest. It lets me understand not only even just fundamental unit economics, but also even concepts you do in high school, like just elasticity of demand, are extraordinarily helpful for knowing, okay, is this business actually viable in this particular market context? Or is this particular market too oligopolistic to be able to have something with these kinds of fixed costs, etc.?
Mm.
Very simple things that you learn in high school that you expand upon at university level in economics are invaluable. And I think once you've learned them, they become very obvious frameworks to apply to the world, but they often aren't frameworks that other people use. And so that gives you an edge, but it also just generally gives you an ability to better understand the world around you. And that absolutely applies to startups as well. I think my chosen career path, at least for now, in entrepreneurship is certainly non-traditional. So I see my degree very much as a toolkit, and I see economics as a part of that toolkit to better understanding the world around me, better understanding market landscapes, better understanding businesses. I would love to say better understanding pricing products. I'm at the stage of pricing the product of my own startup at the moment, and
Mm.
that's more animal spirits than actual economics, to be completely honest.
Mm.
But it's fantastic to have both the intuitive background and the mathematical background of economics.
Yes, brilliant. Excellent. Excellent. I suppose I have a follow-up question to that, just with my own personal context as a high school teacher. And as such, I speak to a lot of students who like you are very, very keen and interested in economics, but they're also keen with maths and they're also keen with finance or with commerce or with business. And so they weigh up kind of all of those different worlds. They're curious as to the Venn diagram, is how much overlap there is. So
Absolutely.
since you do have your hand in economics and the startups and the maths, I suppose the thing that a lot of my students are the most curious about is in relation to mathematics and in relation to finance, the career path from university seems to be a little bit more straightforward. At least
Certainly.
in the Queen's End world, where if they have a finance degree, they're probably going to go into financial analysis or mergers and acquisitions or consulting. But with the mathematics or the applied mathematics and the economics, it tends to be a little bit more toolkit like, as you say, where they don't know
Absolutely.
exactly what field they might end up in. So can you speak to that? Is your, since you are, it sounds like you're in that world exactly. How clear or muddy is the, okay, this could be where I'm looking to work in the next 3, 4, 5 years after I graduate? How narrow or wide is that path?
I think it's as narrow or wide as you want it to be honest.
Okay.
I think with something like a finance degree or a commerce degree in general, there is a lot more of a defined path for you. And the same thing's true in medicine, in law,
Mm,
in a lot of these degrees which are still very academic, but can be almost vocational at times. Something
yes.
like economics or maths is unashamedly, we're giving you tools, you can do a lot with these tools.
Mm,
And in terms of the intersections, there are so many intersections. I mean, there are overlaps between maths and economics all the time, as you would
yes.
expect there to be. There are overlaps between
Yes.
economics and finance all the time. I think the most, it depends with the realm of economics. I think econ in general can be divided into again, at a very high level, the intuitive side of economics and the analytical side of economics. At university, you're being taught how to say, these are the particular details of a tax policy. What is the dollar value of a change that this is going to cause to a particular person's income in this particular income bracket? How does that aggregate over society, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm,
At high school economics, you're more learning what are the basic intuitive frameworks that I can bring to a news story about a policy to understand it
mm,
in a better than surface level so that I can understand how it's going to affect me, how it's going to affect my family, the people around me, and how it's going to affect my world. Even those frameworks are exceptionally useful. So I think if you want that more defined career path, go for it. You will still have a very strong grounding even in the high school economics you've done. If you want to take that further and you want to both expand the more intuitive frameworks and understand more deeply the analysis, especially if you want to go down the more mathematical route, I would say absolutely study economics at university. It's invaluable. I find it really cool. I think the expansion of the toolkit is well worth it.
mm,
At the end of the day, it's a personal question for each student. I think
yeah.
in terms of finance, you tend to get, at least to my understanding, I don't study finance, but you get a lot of the economics you need inside that degree and you get a lot of the maths inside that degree. But I know plenty of people who study finance and economics as a double
Mm.
degree. Maths and economics is very common as a double degree across the world. I think it's the most common double degree for maths at MIT and at most universities.
Oh, wow.
It's that's something that sets you up very, very well. You have both the strong analytical foundation
Cool.
and the strong intuitive foundation, and from that you can both solve problems and apply a more intuitive mindset to problems to better understand them without complex analysis.
Beautiful. And it sounds like that situation of being unsure at the early stage, if you want the broader path with the more options, or you want the narrow, more defined path. It sounds like if you're not even sure which of those paths are for you as a year 12 student, it seems like at least in your world at UNSW, you won't be alone. There'll be plenty of other students in
Absolutely.
your cohort, plenty of opportunities to narrow the path or to widen or broaden the path as well. Excellent. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
No, my pleasure. And that's what internships are for as well at
Mm,
university. And most universities have programs where you get work experience, you try things. That's what this period of life is about. It's about seeing, do I like this? Do I not like this? Look, I started in computer science and economics. I've changed my degree to maths and economics because I found the computer science that was taught at university wasn't as stimulating for me as the maths. You try
mm,
things and you work it out
excellent.
eventually.
That's it. That's probably my favorite sort of message to pass on to the year 12s is that they're regardless of which state they're in and how the uni application process works in their state, that first time they set those first preferences, that's only the first time they set those first preferences, and that includes receiving that first time you see your ATAR and the first time you step to all of that sort of stuff. If there's one thing that alumni tend to say, it's that as soon as you find those things out, as soon as you find out what your ATAR is, you just kind of shrug and you think, okay, that's all right. And then
Exactly.
you kind of realize instantly how that perhaps a lot of the pressure you may have been putting on yourself to get that first right choice might have
Completely
been a little bit
unnecessary.
unfounded because so many people end up changing. Excellent. I would be remiss if I didn't remind for any of the students who are watching live with us, first of all, thank you for joining us. We do have the chat open as well. So if you do have any questions for Sam, whether it's about UNSW, maths, economics, computer science, or the Olympiad, feel free to fire up the chat. We won't go through every single question live, of course, but we will try to, carve out some time towards the end. Um, well, let's use that, Sam, as a way to segue, I suppose, more towards yourself in senior high school and as well as the 2022 competition. Is there anything um, that you could sort of elaborate on? Basically, what do you recall from your experiences in the 2022 Australian Economics Olympiad? Were there specific challenges or feelings with the round one test, the process of collaborating with the other students in the group presentations, which is my favorite part to kind of observe? What do you recall about the process, 3 years ago, I suppose now, as part of the competition?
This is probably going to scare the people who are watching it later more than it's going to scare the people who are watching now because the people who are watching now, good on you for showing up. But I read the whole of Core, which I now understand I didn't need to do, but I did read the whole of Core,
Yeah.
and I absolutely loved that, honestly. I loved being exposed to more advanced economics, which I now understand much more deeply in uni. And I think the learning process that led up to the Olympiad was by far the most valuable part of the initial stages for me. The actual round one quiz, I really enjoyed it. And I think that's probably the most important thing. It's not an exam. It's not supposed to be an exam. It's an
Mm,
Olympiad. You're supposed to enjoy it. It's designed to challenge you. It's designed to give you an opportunity to play with economic concepts that you wouldn't get a chance to work with in the
mm,
classroom and to apply your knowledge. I remember there was one question. I guess you can't reuse it now that I've said it, but there was one question about what you predict the future trends of the Australian labour market to be over
mm,
the next 5 years. And you never get asked that in the HSC. You never get asked that in any high school level exam. You never get asked for your opinion on what you think from your own brain, from your own intuition is going to happen. And being able to take the concepts you've learned, take the frameworks you've learned, and apply them in that predictive way is quite fantastic, I think. And it, I think even being asked those questions liberates you to understand that you can answer them. And it
mm,
gives you, or at least it certainly gave me, the confidence to go out and find more problems and start working on those problems and think, well, okay, I've got all these tools. How else can I use them? What else can I do with them? Then
mm,
in the round two competition, I'm not sure if you're all doing it online this year. I assume you are, given it's still interstate. That was certainly a bit of a challenge logistically, but it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, by round two, everyone who's there wants to be there. You all really enjoy economics, and you're getting the opportunity to collaborate with really smart people on a really interesting problem where you've got a lot of scope to vary, to play with things, and to come up with an answer that you think is best and that your group thinks is best. Yes, it's a tight turnaround, absolutely. But the intellectual stimulus of that to me was absolutely fantastic. I mean, complete honesty, I remember distinctly rewriting my entire script exactly 8 minutes before we were on to present. So don't expect it to be plain sailing by any
mm.
means. But it was so fun, and the friends I made there are still my friends. it's a fantastic opportunity to work with really interesting people who share your passions in economics. And even if you never see them again, it's still a fantastic opportunity to work with them.
Yeah, yes, brilliant. Just with that opportunity, for those that may not know, for the students out there, the round one test is it is a test. Your school will, I suppose, is in charge of administering it in person at your school, and then the round one, the collaborative, the group presentation. I believe it's the top 40 from that round one test, or the top students from that round one test. They get put into teams of five. Everyone from different schools is kind of mixed up, and then I don't remember exactly the details, but you're all emailed a case study. And then you have a single digit number of days. I want to say it's around 2, maybe 3 days to work and collaborate via whatever online, presentation, keynote presentation platform you make, whether it's Google Drive or OneNote or whatever it is, to meet and put together, a case presentation to a panel of professionals. It really is that second round presentation is, as a teacher, my favorite thing to in the small opportunities that I've had to be able to discuss with students about what it was like and just how quickly they have to turn that over, and also the relative absence. I like what you said, Sam, that it's not meant to be an exam. It's meant to be an experience. It's meant to be a fun learning thing for people who really love economics, because we tend to get emails, or because I've been a little bit, I've had some previous students do well in the past, and my school has some students who continually every year enter the competition. They've asked about, are there previous papers? Is there a set marking criteria? Is there a marking guide? And I say, no, there's none of those things. It doesn't follow. And or they'll say, which curriculum? Which curriculum? I've downloaded all of the past HSC papers. I've said, no, it doesn't follow. It explicitly does not follow the HSC. It doesn't follow the QC up in Queensland or the VC in Victoria. It's on the website that it does not follow any specific high school curriculum, because it's meant to assess and judge the nuances and the complexities of your economic thinking, not how good you are at mastering how to get marks in high school, which is
Exactly.
also part of the game in the day-to-day high school life, is understanding the marking criteria. But this is really a content thing. So thank you so much, Sam, for that. If we can sort of pivot back a little bit, something in your bio really, really sort of jumped out to me. So I'd love the chance if you could sort of expound on that. I found the words build and design. I guess especially interesting in your bio. I guess can you elaborate on the types of societal problems, markets, policies, the things, whether they're private sector or public sector, if they're startup based, if they're social policy, the the build and design kind of also indicates to me if that you do have a create like several creative bones in you, but then also to improve, I can't remember what the wording was, but to build a better world, to like to improve life, I suppose. So can you sort of expand on that? Big picture, kind of almost philosophy. What are you hoping to do? The build and design, what are you hoping to do with your economics toolkit, I suppose? What's the dream?
Great question, first of all. I think, yeah, look, to me, the reason we're on this planet, you can define plenty of reasons for human existence. To me, it's to make the lives of the people around us better. And that can mean anything from smiling at someone every day to building a startup that changes the world to becoming the prime minister, whatever you want.
Mm,
I think at some level, it's the responsibility of all of us to make the lives of the people around us better. And I feel like the way that I can do that most effectively and most impactfully is through the startup world, at least for now. There are plenty of ways that you can do that. There are plenty of policies that have been proposed that could do that. One of them that is a pet project of mine is a wealth indexed consumption tax that lets you do things like have fully privatized education and fully privatized healthcare and then remove the inequalities therein. There are problems with that, absolutely. The biggest one being that the rich pay more for apples, and then you need to know every single person's wealth by some metric when they tap their credit card at a POS. And how on earth you do that is really hard,
mm,
but that's technical infrastructure at the end of the day,
mm,
and that's what I want to build. So
mm,
my current startup, what I'm working on at the moment, is in cybersecurity and in making mass data breaches impossible. That's the aim of that. And from there, I want to be able to sell to government. I want to be able to build tools that let you know if a certain decision was made, this is exactly which politician made it. And if you can improve
Mm,
transparency and accountability in politics, then you improve the accountability of
mm.
politicians to voters and you improve the democratic process. It's those kinds of step change improvements through small technical infrastructural changes that I want to be able to spearhead. And to me, programming is a fantastic way to do that. Maths is a fantastic way to enhance it. Economics gives you the framework to look at the whole thing.
Brilliant. Excellent. Of course, you are mentioning maths a lot. It's a core fabric. It's a core framework within your profession, and we can tell inside your heart, I suppose. Uh, but there are a lot of students who love and approach economics who are honestly a little bit worried about how good do I have to be at maths because I love the addressing and solving social problems. I love the possibility of going into public policy or the private sector and consulting. I really, really just struggle with rates of change and derivatives and
That was me.
and that sort of stuff kind of scares those students. So if you're not hoping to be involved in the math side of things, how much can you speak towards, yes, economics is there's still a home for you in economics. There's still a lot of value you can bring to the table, even if you will be looking for others to help you with your maths or do the maths for you, or it'll be a different team.
Absolutely.
So yeah, yeah. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Absolutely. That was me. I am the kid who said 6 times 3 is 63 on a year 8 maths exam because my brain was not functioning and because I was stressed about maths all the time. That was me in high school, 100%. I didn't feel like I was good at maths. To be honest, the mathematics you do at uni is very different than the maths you do in high school, just like the maths you do in high school is different from the maths you do in primary school. You move from arithmetic to more abstract concepts to much more abstract concepts in uni. If you feel like you're not good at maths now, don't discount that, I think, is the most important message. But if you really don't enjoy it, that's absolutely fine because economics, as I said before, gives you both an intuitive and an analytical side. If you can understand the basic principles of opportunity cost, of supply and demand curves, of the idea of there being an equilibrium price, you are already so much further ahead than the
Hmm.
vast majority of the population and the vast majority of professionals in a lot of non-economic professions.
Hmm.
If you have the maths, you have the ability to dive deeper. And the general example I use is economics tells you there is an equilibrium, and I have an idea of how I could find it. Maths tells you the number that that equilibrium actually takes on. You can, at the end of the day, you can get someone else to do that for you. You can do that with a computer. You can do that with AI, whatever you like. It is the frameworks and the intuition of economics that are the most important things by far. And if you talk with most economists working at a high level in particularly the public policy domain, the vast majority of them aren't doing a lot of stats, a lot of maths. Professor Foster, who has been running the AEO for a long time, her background is in econometrics. She used to do an enormous amount of it. And we had a fantastic conversation once about how she almost swore herself off it because maths can get you really, really siloed into a particular niche of a particular problem.
Hmm.
And it's only with the intuitive side of things that you can step back and actually look at the whole problem as it sits. So, is there a place for you in economics if you don't enjoy the mathematical side of things? Absolutely. Frankly, we need more people who don't enjoy the mathematical side of things. You need both kinds of economists. You need econometricians, you need people who may not deal so much with the stats, but who deal with the underlying models and who change particular parameters and coefficients and work out the optimal structure of those models. And you equally need people who understand the whole big picture of economics, who understand the mental frameworks that you bring to a problem through economics and are able to apply those in a more general way. I know plenty of people who study maths and economics who you give them a news article and they won't be able to apply basic economic concepts because
Hmm.
they will be siloed into the maths of it. And I've been there myself. And I
Hmm.
think keeping that intuitive understanding is really important and it can be hard to do when you're really focused on the maths. So there is absolutely a place for you in economics, even if you don't enjoy that side of things so much.
Excellent, excellent. Uh, Quickly for the students out there, I have a quick message. Some of the details confirmed. Yes, the top 40 from the AEO first round will be grouped into 8 groups of 5 students to work on the second round for an economics policy case study. And not only is the AEO not based on the QCE, the HSE, or the VCE, it's also not based on IB. So if you're at an IB school, you don't have an advantage either. This is just pure economic insight and logic and thought and attention to detail and opportunity cost trade-offs and things like that. Um, like I suppose with that, Sam, you sort of touched a little bit, um, thinking back to going through the competition and the round one test and the round two. Do you have any, I suppose, advice for anyone who is hoping to do quite well, who's hoping to make the most of the experience, and they've just been told studying your own curriculum, what you've been learning in class, may or may not, probably won't be leaps and bounds advantageous. So how would you, having you've gone through the gauntlet, how would you suggest they prepare for the competition?
Step one, know that by the fact that you're here, you are interested in economics and you like economics. I hope.
Hmm.
If that is true, then you're already well prepared. You're learning economics, you have an understanding of economics in your head, you enjoy what you're learning, you are already at a foundational level absolutely fine, just by the fact that you're here already. Step two, chill out. It is not about trying to learn the most concepts. It is not about trying to don't do what I did of going through, I think it was core chapter 3 or chapter 4, which goes into isoclines and profit curves and everything, and obsess over that for an entire weekend and stress out that you don't understand every little bit of the
Hmm.
mathematics and think you're going to fail the first round because you won't. That's not even going to be in there, chances are. You will have a lot more success by looking around you at the world and applying economics to what you see. If you're already reading the news on a regular basis, you're already doing that.
Hmm.
If you measure your probability of success in the AEO by how well, if someone comes up to you and asks you for your opinion on something where economics applies, by how well you can answer them. And that doesn't mean you have to come up with a perfect answer, it just means you come up with an answer. If you understand the foundational concept of opportunity cost and you can apply that to life, you're fine. If you if you're already thinking about opportunity cost in terms of the trade-off of how much you study versus how much you work versus how much you play, etc., then you're absolutely fine. You're doing all the right things already. I think it's very much about those foundational concepts. And as has been said, it's very much about the logic of economics. It's about those frameworks and applying them. Reading core really helps, absolutely. It will give you more of a foundation in understanding that. I think skimming core is helpful for anyone. I think watching summary videos about core is also really helpful. It's a fantastic textbook. But at the end of the day, it's about intuition and it's about applying economics to day-to-day life and getting a feel for how you do that. And you do that by practicing.
Excellent. Brilliant. Good. I'm glad because that aligns with my biggest piece of advice for most of my students is at the very, very least, or no, perhaps at the very most, make sure that you are kind of tapped into recent economic policy, government news, which I must say, it's kind of it might even be too difficult to escape the economic news these days and the political news these days and geopolitics and such. But if you kind of approach it like a real economist who thinks that the trade-offs, who understands that there's no such thing as a perfect plan or a perfect policy, that there's going to be positives and negatives, short-term impacts, long-term impacts. Short-term negatives might be good in the long term, or short-term positives might be completely destroyed in the long term. It might significantly help a group of people, but disadvantage another group. And currently, group A might be the more important group to help, but 5 years from now, you might actually have to look after group B. So there's no fixed policy that is right now and forever. That which is why economic policy is always so dynamic. So if you're following the news, if you're paying attention in class, if you think in terms of the core economic models, such as just the trade-offs and opportunity cost, the basic economic problems, scarcity, um, you know, things like that, you should be fine. Excellent, excellent. Uh, so one more question, I suppose, before we look into if anything else comes into the chat. Um, Sam, can you explain a little bit about what it's like to study economics at UNSW? You sort of touched on this a little bit, but almost maybe like from a day to day. Now, I suppose I am unofficially a representative of non-New South Wales person from Queensland and from Toronto, Canada before that. And I do know that there's likely to be at least a few high school students from interstate who might not know too much about it. We regularly have Western Australian competitors, Queensland competitors, of course, Victorian competitors. So for those who might not be familiar with UNSW at all, um, what is it like to study economics there? Whether it's course structure, the academic support, opportunity, uni life, that sort of stuff.
UNSW is fantastic. I think, look, the only complaint I have is we do have a trimester system, whereas everyone else has a semester system. So everyone else has
Mm.
2 terms. We've got three, which makes holiday alignments awkward. That's the only complaint
Uh,
I would have. Otherwise, it is, it's a fantastic place to be. The culture is wonderful. In terms of studying economics, things are grouped at university into level one, level two, and level three courses. The Bachelor of Economics degree at UNSW, at least how it stands at the moment and how I think they want to keep it, is you do all of the core courses and then you can do basically any electives you like. So it's unlike a lot of other degrees in that there's not a specific structure that you have to follow, like you go up this ladder, then you go up this ladder. You very much do this bundle and then you can do whatever you like. So, for example, right now I'm studying game theory and politics and economics are the economic courses I'm doing. And as a taste of that, so we've just finished term now. In the last politics lecture, we looked at how voters vote for politicians based on economic principles versus cultural principles. So if you
Mm.
present a voter with a politician who aligns with them in the culture wars, but whose economic policies would make their life worse, versus someone who doesn't align with them in the culture wars, whose economic policies would make their life better, who are they going to vote for? And in a lot of developed societies, unfortunately, they go with the culture wars. But
Mm.
in exploring concepts like that is really fantastic. And you get the opportunity to do that in particularly the level three courses. That's where I think for most people who are doing this competition, I'll be completely honest, the level one courses probably won't stimulate you very much. Early micro one, macro one is a lot of what you've done in high school. It will be repetition. It will be repetition from a new perspective, and it will be repetition in a way that expands the scope of economics, absolutely. It's certainly expanding it beyond the Australian context, which I'm not sure about the other states, but I know the HSC syllabus is very heavy on the Australian context. It's very heavy on stat memorization. You do not need to memorize stats at uni, which is a blessing and a curse. I think you you get much more of an exposure to the intuitive and the analytical principles in those early level one courses. Then for me, when my econ degree really started getting deeply engaging was the micro two course, which where you start working with a bit more maths, not too much. You start working with principles like game theory. You start saying things like, okay, let's say two people have certain preference rankings of what they want to purchase. They have specific budgets. How are they going to differently allocate their resources? You're putting opportunity cost into very direct practice. And then you can do the same thing with trade, et cetera, et cetera. Those kinds of more analytical things are what I really enjoy. Other people have really enjoyed the level one courses. You can do courses on labor markets, you can do courses on game theory, you can do courses on market structures. All of the things that you cover in high school, you go into much more depth on at uni.
Mm.
That's the biggest difference. There is definitely a difference in that in those early courses, you're focusing on the intuition. Past that, the intuition is taken for granted and you're focusing very much on the analysis. And that's good and bad. I think it's really important to stay connected with the world around you and keep applying the economic principles you learn in high school. I would say by the end of my second year of uni, my ability to do intuitive economic principles was probably marginally worse than at the end of where I was in high school because you focus more on that analytical, specific problem kind of thinking. But if you can get over that, which is just a matter of reading the news, you're absolutely fine. In terms of uni
Mm.
life, it's fantastic. You meet so many people. It's absolutely wonderful. You have the opportunity for exchanges, you have clubs and societies, all sorts of things. It's an opening of your mind and a broadening of your life in every possible sense. And obviously, one of the big benefits with UNSW is you get to live in Sydney, which is obviously the best city in Australia and obviously
Mm.
the best state in Australia, because as we all know, Queensland is woefully inferior. I had to add
Uh,
it. I had to.
no problem. No problem. I do have to say, I love the small couple of times that I have been to UNSW. I do love that Randwick, Coogee Beach area. I am quite.
Yeah, it's a great campus.
It's just seems excellent. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
it's a great
beautiful.
campus. And the public transport is amazing as well, which is very helpful.
No worries. And I have no problem with the dig. I have no problem with the dig with the Queensland. I didn't go to any of these Queensland universities up here. Well, I suppose I went to James Cook University from Townsville, way up north. So any shot that anyone wants to take at Brisbane, me as a regional Queenslander, North Queensland, I'm happy to yeah, I'm happy to represent the regional centers of Australia. Excellent, excellent. So with that, Sam, I think that's a very good and uplifting and pleasant sort of point to end. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, especially given it is a Saturday evening. Um,
Oh, my pleasure. Fantastic to
so
be here
yes,
and fantastic to get to talk to the people doing the AEO this year. Really, it was a wonderful experience for me, and I hope it's a fantastic experience for you all too.
excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sam. Okay, Ray, is there anything else that we needed to cover with any of the dates? I will remind everybody, students, that we do in the 10th of May, I believe, a couple weeks from now, we have our third educative seminar. We have someone who is more directly tied to public policy at the state level from the UNSW, I believe. Um, so that should swing again more towards the professional and policy side. So we are looking forward to that. Ray, is there anything else that we need to touch on before we leave everybody for the evening?
Yeah, no, I think everything is a great interview again. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for Justin. And just a reminder, before the right before the third educative seminar will be the registration deadline for the AEO 2025. Gonna be May the 9th. It's a little bit earlier this year because with more students joining the competition, we need more time to mark the first round. Yeah, so if you're here, like if you're listening to the recording, make sure you remind your teacher. If your teacher haven't, I know a lot of schools are still, basically putting together all the names, but if your teacher hasn't really submitted the registration form, make sure you remind them to submit the registration form or before 9th of May. And one more thing about UNSW, so actually all the students getting to the first round of the AEO get to do 50% or above, which means they get an honorable mention, will be invited for like a VIP open day to know more about USW and USW like business school. So it's a little bit inconvenient for interstate students, unfortunately. But yeah, we're trying to accommodate. If you're very interested in joining USW to study economics, you should always send us an email. We're trying to accommodate your need to know more about it. Okay.
Yes, excellent, Ray. I do remember last year, the year before, I did have a couple of students who were very keen in learning a little bit more about UNSW. And so the professionals over at the university were really, really accommodating to provide whatever information they could to the Queenslanders who were unable to fly down and visit in person. So I can definitely confirm that they're very accommodating to those who are keen on the university, who want to ask more nuanced questions.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a question there. Yeah.
yes, yes. So thank you to the question that comes into the chat. Sam, this sounds like it might be for you if you're still there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Sam, is there enough intersection between politics and economics to study both simultaneously in university? Um,
100%. 100%. There is a whole degree at least at UNSW, I think at Sydney Uni as well. I assume at universities in other states, PPE, politics, philosophy, and
mm,
economics, where you study all three together. If that's not what you want to do, you can absolutely study politics and economics separately. Politics is usually taught from a more almost philosophical perspective. It's more taught from here's how the system works and so on and so forth. It depends what university you do it at, whereas economics is taught from a much more foundation and then intuition framework style approach. There is a whole course that I'm doing right now, Politics and Economics, which is an economics course that focuses very much on the, I suppose, empirical side of politics. So we spend each week reviewing papers on different aspects of politics and politics over time. So, for example, how does populist media actually impact voters? And how can we study that, say, in a case in Italy? How can we understand the impacts of social media on voters, et cetera, using economic principles, using models from game theory, etc. So there is absolutely enough overlap. Fundamentally, politics is it is separate from economics. It is obviously very much intertwined with economics, and I always say at the end of the day, you can study economics against anything, really. You can apply economic principles to pretty much everything. And because at the end of the day, everything is economics, everything is opportunity cost. The complexity of a watch is how many components it was economical to put in for the amount of cost, et cetera, et cetera. everything is economics. So you can always apply that lens, and politics is enough inside economics for that to be very fruitful, and enough outside economics for other approaches for, say, a politics degree or a politics philosophy and economics degree to also be very fruitful. I would say try politics courses. If you don't enjoy that framework so much, then try economics courses. The intersection courses can be really, really good. I think a PPE degree may be something you want to do. Otherwise, yeah, it depends. I think it's a really fruitful approach. Absolutely.
Excellent. Great question. Great question to the student out there. Thank you so much. Okay, so with that, everybody, that I think that closes the show for our second educative seminar. Stay tuned. We'll send out the link probably in a week or so for our next educative seminar. It's coming up on the 10th of May. I did have some time to dig up the name. The interview is going to be Eugenia Marembo, who is a senior policy analyst with the New South Wales Treasury. So very much professional in, I guess, actual direct economic policy at the state level, at the Treasury level of New South Wales. So for more on the career journey side of things, we'll keep you posted for, I think, yes, the 10th of May, I believe. So thanks very much, everybody. We will see you next time. Bye.
Thanks very much, everyone.